SMU made a run and got back into Tuesday night's game with Boopie Miller on the bench. And with the star guard playing 35 minutes a night, should that suggest that Boopie Miller should not be playing as much?
You are Locked On SMU, your daily podcast on the SMU Mustangs, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to Locked On SMU here on the Locked On Podcast Network on a Thursday edition. My name's Grayson Singleton. Thanks for making us your first listen of the day, as well as making us the #1 sports podcast network that is out there. Our episode today, before we go any further, is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDON for $20 off your first purchase. Coming up on the show today, we've got a conundrum with head coach Andy Enfield. Is he a good coach? Is he not a good coach? Did he get out-coached on Tuesday night? We will talk about all of that in the second segment of the show. Plus, the ACC and its commissioner has addressed its weird tiebreaker scenarios from last season. Are there changes coming? We will talk about that to close up the show as well. But first, let's get right down to business and continue our discussion of SMU's loss by 1 point at home to NC State on Tuesday night. Now, there's a lot of discussion around Andy Enfield, and we're going to have that discussion as well. But one thing I noticed in this game was that when NC State made that run in the second half to build its double-digit lead, SMU was able to go on a run to bring it back to within 5 with Boopie Miller on the bench. So it made me ask the question, okay, are there certain parts of a game where Boopie Miller should just be given more of a rest? Now, Boopie Miller is averaging 35 minutes a night. He is still SMU's leading scorer. He is still the leading assist man, I believe. He might be second now after Copeland's big night. But he is still 1 or 2 in assists per game in the conference. So we need to give Boopie Miller his due respect. But there is something that is very much apparent about this SMU team with Boopie Miller on the floor versus off the floor. And that is their defense. SMU is a much better defensive team with Boopie Miller off the floor. The NBA analogy I can make with this, and there are a lot of them, but Isaiah Thomas when he was with the Boston Celtics. Isaiah Thomas, undersized point guard, dynamic scorer, can make plays for other people, but a liability on defense. Steph Curry kind of fits into this category. Steph Curry is a better defender, but he's still a guy that you have to hide defensively. But especially with Isaiah Thomas with with Boston in those years, they would be better with him off the floor defensively because there was more length on the floor. And this showed in SMU's game against NC State because with BJ Edwards running the point, put a pin in that, you now had a lot more length on the floor because you were running with a lineup like BJ, Jaron Pierre, Jermaine O'Neal Jr., who I thought played decently well, and then your frontline guys of Corey Washington or maybe even a Sam Walters in there, and then one of your centers, Smet Igutolu or Jalen Toombs. But you had a lot more length, you were a lot more switchable, and you didn't have to hide anybody defensively. Whereas with Boopie Miller, whether it's his size or just inability to defend, he's just not a good defender, and it shows with SMU's defense. SMU gave up that NC State run largely with Boopie Miller on the floor. In that stretch, with Boopie Miller on the floor, SMU was a -12 because not only is he not good defensively, he was also turning the basketball over as well. But when they made the run, remember this, they were able to cut that all the way back down to 4 by the time Boopie got back into the game. Now, I am not saying to bench Boopie Miller. I need to be very clear about that. I'm not saying that Boopie Miller needs to have his minutes slashed in half. I'm not saying that Boopie Miller needs to be playing 25 minutes a night. I in no way am saying that. He is still your starting point guard. He is still the engine to your offense, and he is still the best player on this team. Let me be abundantly clear about that. But I do think there is upside to not playing him 35 minutes a night. The other things that go into this as well, the other components to this argument, is that Boopie Miller has not looked the same since the flu. And I thought, especially in the NC State game, he would be better at beating people off the dribble and looking back to the pre-illness Boopie Miller. That is still not the case. And quite frankly, I don't know when that's going to be the case. We don't know. But I thought that by now, because we're about, 2 weeks removed from his battle with the flu, and everybody's body heals differently. I'm not going to say, oh, it should have been. I'm not saying all that. I'm saying what has become clear is that he's not completely returned to old Boopie Miller. So because of that, he also just isn't providing the same offensive spark that he had pre-illness. But this also coincides timeline-wise with the fact that B.J. Edwards has gotten better being the orchestrator of the offense. And that, combined with Jaron Pierre Jr. looking better and being more aggressive and more assertive and getting to his spots and turning into just a real nightmare scorer for another team, I think SMU's offense can be just fine if Boopie Miller is given more extended breaks off the floor. Again, I'm not saying that Boopie Miller needs to be playing 25 minutes a night. I'm saying that it may not be the worst thing in the world for SMU to play him 30 minutes a night, 29 minutes a night, instead of 35 minutes a night. Now, another guy that factors into this is Corey Washington, because Corey Washington now is shooting the three ball at 42%. So if you've got Corey Washington now spacing the floor as your de facto four, he's really an undersized four, but whatever. He's essentially a four in this lineup. If he is shooting the ball at 42% from three, 52% from the field, grabbing 5 boards and averaging 11 points a game, now you have 3 guys in Jaron Pierre, B.J. Edwards, and Corey Washington all shooting over 35% from the field. Or from 3, excuse me. That affords you the ability to have Boopie Miller off the floor for more extended times. You get better defensively. You preserve his energy because he's still dealing with some fatigue and loss of condition and all of that. And you still have a guy in B.J. Edwards who has come around to being a pretty good conductor of the offense. That was not the case earlier in the year. It was not. They did not look good offensively. They did not look put together offensively, and they just looked discombobulated with Boopie Miller off the floor earlier in the year. I think that has smoothed itself out. And part of that is because B.J. Edwards was forced to play the point guard when Boopie Miller abruptly had to miss the game against Duke. So all I'm saying here is that Boopie Miller does not need to have his minutes cut in half. Boopie does not need to be sent to the bench. But it is worth noting that this team gets better defensively with him off the floor, and now with Jaron and Corey Washington really hitting their strides as shooters, and B.J. Edwards coming around to playing a better point guard, I think you are afforded the ability now to not have to play Boopie Miller 35 minutes a night, and I think there's upside to making that change if you want to go about it, especially with the fact that he just has not looked the same ever since his battle with the flu. Tell me what you think in the YouTube comments. Hit me on Twitter, Gray_Singleton2, and we can talk about it. If you agree or if you think I'm an idiot as well, I'm here for it all. Coming up next here on Locked On SMU, the Andy Enfield conundrum. What do we think about the SMU coach? I'll tell you what I think on the other side, even in the wake of the loss to NC State. We'll talk about that on the other side. Keep it here on Locked On SMU.
I'm Kalia Butler, host of Locked On Women's Basketball, and this is Mazda's Women's Basketball Snapshot, celebrating the work no highlight reel can ever capture. Number 1 ranked UConn dominated Tennessee 96-66, turning a halftime tie into a historic win and avenging last season's loss by delivering the largest margin in the rivalry's history. AZ Fudd had 27 points and Sarah Strong added 26 as the Huskies remain perfect on the season, reminding everyone why they are the reigning national champions. In the Big Ten, number 2 UCLA rolled past number 8 Iowa 88-65, powered by 22 points from Angela Dukelich and a huge advantage in the paint, staking their claim as a national threat. These moments are earned off the clock, those long before the lights ever come on. The sweat, the fakes, the doubt, the scrapes, and coming back for more every time. Mazda puts that same drive into every detail. Wins define the moment, putting in the work, that defines you. There's more to a Mazda because there's more to you.
All right, welcome back to the show here on Locked On SMU. Appreciate you making us your first listen of the day as always. And make sure you subscribe to the channel if you're new here. We would love to have you be a part of this Locked On Podcast Network community and Locked On SMU community as well. So make sure you subscribe to the YouTube channel as well, as it helps us out with this show. So make sure you subscribe. To those of you on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts, salute to you guys as well. Glad you're here too as well. Okay, so Andy Enfield has been a topic of discussion. I'll put it that way. He's been a topic of discussion on SMU Twitter, in some of the comments as well, in reactions right after the game. It's been a lot. And I've had time to think about this and what I think about Andy Enfield. Now, if you listened to the entire show yesterday, I discussed that I thought Andy Enfield was not the problem in Tuesday night's game. I thought Andy Enfield did good with the timeouts. I liked where that last timeout came on the next to last possession. I was okay with that. I liked how he kept Boopie Miller out of the game until he reinserted him back in. But there was something else that he did in the game that I'm going to get to in a second that I also looked at and said, that's why he's a good coach. But first, let's go through the resume of Andy Enfield, number 1. So Andy Enfield gets Florida Gulf Coast to the Final Four in that Dunk City year in 2012-13. Parlays that into the job at Southern Cal. Are we aware that from 2011 to 2024, Andy Enfield was coaching at Florida Gulf Coast and USC? One a mid-major in the ASUN Conference, the other a Power 4 team that is not known for basketball at all. So he spent 13 seasons coaching at those two places, and he made the NCAA tournament 6 times. That's pretty damn good. As a matter of fact, it took him 2 years to get USC to a place where it was respectable. And after those 2 years, they won 21, 26, and 24 games and barely missed the NCAA tournament in that 2017-2018 year. And then he made the NCAA tournament in 3 of his final 4 seasons at USC. Now, since he's moved over to SMU, last year, 24-11, with a good strength of record and a decent strength of schedule. This year, SMU has a better strength of record against a better strength of schedule, and they are still top 35-40 in the net. They are going to make the NCAA tournament, barring something absolutely catastrophic that I cannot foresee right now. They're going to be back in the NCAA tournament. And this dude has a career winning percentage of 61%. Again, spending 13 years coaching at Florida Gulf Coast and USC. The man knows how to win. The man knows how to coach good basketball. I'm not worried about SMU winning games under Andy Enfield. And then this is the realization that made me think, okay, this guy's a good coach. He talked about after the Louisville game, how in the second half, they had 10 turnovers to 2 assists in the second half. Miserable, right? He told you exactly why. We played it on this show on Monday. He told you exactly why that was, or he played on Tuesday, excuse me. He told us exactly why that was. That we didn't play SMU basketball. It was disappointing to see that from veteran guys, how we stopped moving the ball around. And what did they do immediately on Tuesday night? They came out and that ball was hopping. It was moving around. Defense was moving side to side. I mean, everything. It was great. It was outstanding. They deviate away from it in the second half. That run happens from NC State. Boopie Miller comes off the floor. SMU starts moving it around. Ball movement, player movement, screens and whatnot. They're back into the game. So, not only is he a winner, not only has he done it in multiple places, but he also can get a message across to dudes. And players intake that message and actually go out and fix stuff. Now again, NC State's a really good team, and Andy Enfield is not a perfect coach, by the way. Andy Enfield's not a perfect coach. They're not going to win every single game. Not at SMU. That's not going to happen at SMU. But NC State, being a good team, just punched back and forced SMU into an uncomfortable spot where they did some not good things. But you got to give Andy Enfield credit for tinkering with lineups and getting back into the game and getting back into a position to win that game. Like, need I remind you, this was a game between two teams with fairly similar records coming in. I'm trying to find the final betting line in this one because I think this is going to make my point for me. The final betting line closed at NC State minus 1.5. Translation, that's almost a pick'em. So the fact that NC State didn't even cover, you just lost a game to a good team. I don't think that game was on Andy Enfield. And ultimately, I do think Andy Enfield is a quality head coach. He's proven it everywhere. His one drawback that he has right now is that he's been kind of funky with the lineups. But guess what? There haven't been a lot of bench dudes that have earned the right to have extended minutes. I mentioned in the first segment that Jermaine O'Neal Jr. showed some pretty good stuff. And I thought Jermaine O'Neal played a pretty good game for what he was asked to do. He was active. He got on the boards. He scored a couple of buckets, had 9 points. I thought he was fine. Sam Walters hit a couple of threes. But by and large, for the entirety of the season, he hasn't had 6-7 guys to trust. Maybe that changes next year, but this year it's not the case. And I think he's tried to do his best, and I think he has done his best with the ingredients that he has to work with. Now, the other complicating point in this discussion, especially on a day like today, coming off of a loss against the team that you did, is the Will Wade factor in all of this. Because, yes, when SMU was looking for a coach and decided to hire Andy Enfield, you could have gone to McNeese State and hired Will Wade. Like, that's undisputable. It is also undisputable, if there's anybody here listening that has followed me for the last few years of my radio career, you will know that there are very few people who are bigger fans of Will Wade than I am. When I was doing radio at Oklahoma State in Stillwater, when the Cowboys fired Mike Boynton Jr., I wanted them to hire Will Wade. When I moved to Norman, Oklahoma, where I am now, covering the Sooners, there was talk that Oklahoma could fire Porter Moser after last year. The guy that I advocated replacing him with, Will Wade. So I have been a Will Wade campaigner for the last few years. And I like Will Wade. And I think Will Wade is a good coach. I think he's a good coach for the modern era of college basketball. And if SMU were to have gone that direction, would have been a solid coach. Do I think that SMU is at a significant coaching disadvantage over a Will Wade type coach? I do not. I do not think you are at a significant coaching disadvantage against a Will Wade coach team. I just don't think that. I don't. I mean, Andy Enfield this year has beaten North Carolina, a team with more talent, indisputably more talent than SMU this year. They are now 3-6 against Quad 1. And they will make the NCAA tournament. Probably not as a 6 seed, but they will make the NCAA tournament as a top 10 seed, probably an 8 or a 9. To me, you've done a decent enough, good enough job if you're Andy Enfield here at SMU. So again, what do all of you think? What do you think? I like Andy Enfield as a coach. Is Will Wade better? Maybe, but it's not by a significant margin. I'll tell you that for sure. All right, coming up next here on Locked On SMU, there are potential changes coming to the ACC football tiebreaker rules. We'll discuss all of that to close up the show next. Hiring isn't just about finding someone willing to take your job. It's about finding the right person with the right background who can actually help your business move forward. And if you want candidates who match what you're looking for, Indeed Sponsored Jobs is the move. Because instead of hoping the right person just stumbles across your post, Indeed helps you match with quality candidates by boosting your job listing to the people who fit your specific criteria, like skills, certifications, and location. If I were hiring, I wouldn't just want someone who could just help. I'd want someone with real experience who could jump right in and hit the ground running. And that's what you can like about Indeed. You can get specific and target exactly what you need. It saves you time because you're spending less energy sourcing through mismatches. And with sponsored jobs, your post gets seen by candidates who are actually a good fit. And here's a stat that says it all. In the minute I've been talking to you, companies just like yours have made 27 hires on Indeed, according to Indeed data worldwide. So if you're hiring, spend less time searching and more time interviewing candidates who check all your boxes with Indeed Sponsored Jobs. Listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to help get your job the premium status it deserves at Indeed.com/podcast. That's Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Hiring, do it the right way and do it with Indeed. There's nothing like being in an NBA arena with the crowd, the energy, and all the moments. Getting tickets, though, that part hasn't always been so simple. But that's why I use Gametime. Gametime has become the go-to app for scoring tickets fast, without the hassle. It puts the advantage back where it belongs, the fans. You can pull up the Gametime app, pick an upcoming NBA game, and you can have tickets all within minutes. And I love seeing the all-in pricing up front. So there's no surprise fees. So all fees, all taxes, everything, all included in the upfront price, so you get no surprises when you go to check out. And y'all know my favorite part about Gametime, the ability to see the court view from your seat before you buy the ticket. So, take the guesswork out of buying NBA tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDON for $20 off your first purchase. That's code LOCKEDON for $20 off. Download the Gametime app today, and remember, it's gametime.co, not .com. All right, final segment here on Locked On SMU as we close things up. I want to tell you about our Everydayer Club as well. If you haven't checked it out already and you always make us your first listen of the day, this thing is built for you. So you can get access to a Discord channel that is members only, all Locked On Everydayers. Hang out with Locked On Everydayers, plus some of our hosts as well. Plus, you'll even get an ad-free version of this here show, Locked On SMU, compatible with Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or other major podcast distributors. All you've got to do is go to the link in the show notes or lockedonsmu.supercast.com to get started with the Everydayer Club. Again, $5 a month or $50 for the whole year. We would love to have you as a part of our Everydayer Club. Okay, closing it up here, Jim Phillips, the commissioner of the ACC, was asked about the tiebreakers, and along with a litany of other things concerning the ACC, but he was asked about the football tiebreakers recently. And I want to read you this from an article in On3. This is what he said. We will certainly look to change the tiebreakers. Quote, we commiserated with the other Power 4 commissioners that what happened this year could have happened to anybody, and it wasn't from a lack of effort. Okay, fair. We had spent quite a bit of time on the tiebreaker format with our ADs and head football coaches, but who would have ever thought that we would go to a 7th tiebreaker with 5 teams tied at 6-2? You live and learn, and you're better for it. Okay, to that last part, by the way, that was Jim Phillips, the commissioner. To that last part, who could have thought that it could have happened? Me? A lot of people? There's 18 damn teams in the conference. There's a lot of permutations that could happen, including that one. And look, yes, we have inflated conferences now, but yes, this kind of has all happened real fast, but you gotta be aware that something goofy like that could happen. And goofy is the best way to describe the ACC tiebreakers in 2025. If you have forgotten what this absolute monstrosity was, for 3 or more teams in a tie, you'd say combined head-to-head win percentage among the tied teams if all teams are common opponents. I'm good with keeping that one. If all tied teams are not common opponents, the tied team that defeated each of the other tied teams gets priority. If all tied teams are not common opponents and no tied team defeated each of the other tied teams, but there's one that lost, you eliminate that team. Okay, cool. I'm good with that. Then comes the win percentage against all common opponents. And that at that part, that is where we get problems. And that is where you had the case that Duke won the ACC and did not make the college football playoff. Quite frankly, neither should it have, because Duke wasn't that good. And Miami, thankfully, was the ACC representative and made it all the way to the national championship. So, what would I do in this case? Because there will be some changes. The ACC tiebreakers were a subject of absolute mockery in the days and weeks after the selection Sunday. So, what do we do from here? I think it's very simple. Like I just hinted to, keep the first 2. Combine head-to-head win percentage among the tied teams if they're all common opponents. That's the easiest, most simple, and quite frankly, the smartest way to do it. So keep that as your number 1. Number 2, if all tied teams are not common opponents, the tied team that defeated each of the other tied teams gets to go. I'm here for it. I'm absolutely here for that. And then you eliminate the team that lost to the other teams. I'm here for that. After that, there is a very, very simple way to do this. Go by the college football playoff rankings. At that point, go to the rankings. Because here's why I would go this direction. Your goal is to get a team into the college football playoff. Your goal is as much representation as possible. That's why I would go with this. So here's what you do. Obviously, to decide who goes to the ACC championship, you're going to have to wait until the selection show comes up. Now this is what presents a hurdle, because that selection show, remember, is not on a Sunday. That selection show is still on a Tuesday. So you would have to either go by the college football playoff or by the AP rankings. I would be okay with going by the AP rankings, which are released on the next day, on Sunday. So if you need to go by some rankings, I would choose that. That way you give everybody the ability to prepare, not wait till Tuesday to find out if you're going to play. Now, is it likely that a situation like this arises as identically as it did in 2025 again? Not necessarily, but there needs to be a common sense element into all of this. And those of you that have been listening to this show for as long as it's been around, again, I appreciate you being our everydayers. Tap in with the Everydayer Club. But you guys know that I like to operate on the basis of common sense. And to operate by the basis of common sense with the goal in mind of getting the most of your teams into the college football playoff as possible, send the highest ranked teams among the tied teams, obviously. Like, we still need to make sure that it's the tied teams atop the conference. Of those tied teams, send the higher ranked. Send the 2 higher ranked. If stages 1 and stages 2 don't get us to 2 championship participants, send the 2 highest ranked at that point of the teams that are still remaining. That way, we don't have a situation where you could have a team that, yes, Duke made it to the ACC championship, but there was no way they were going to get into the playoff. It wasn't going to happen. So in order to avoid something like that happening again, and risking your entire conference being left out and omitted from the college football playoff, do yourself a favor and position yourself better. So, we have 2 stages of results on the field in ACC competition. We have 2 stages. If those do not work, we need to go to something different. And let's go with rankings. Let's go with the 2 highest ranked teams, go to the championship game, and now we've set ourselves up better to send our champion to the college football playoff. Because ultimately, representation in the final field of 12, like it's going to remain for 2026, is what ultimately is going to matter. All right, that'll do it for Locked On SMU here on this Thursday. Appreciate you all making me your first listen of the day. And if you haven't already, make sure you check out our Everydayer Club here on Locked On SMU. If you never miss an episode, this is built for you. Get Locked On SMU ad-free, plus members-only Discord access and more. Head to lockedonsmu.supercast.com to join the club. And now, for those of you on YouTube, you're going to be sent over to our national Locked On Podcast Network YouTube channel. On audio, make sure you make your second listen of the day Locked On College Football. We'll talk to you guys tomorrow to close up the week here on Locked On SMU. Take it easy, everybody.